Hello everyone, and welcome to the demonstration video. I do want to make a formal announcement, so for those of you who are watching these videos, you'll get this. I'll also make an announcement on Canvas pretty soon. But as for your assignments, I do want to say, yes, some of them will be graded a little harshly, mostly because when it comes to programming, everything has to be very precise. When it comes to programming, there is right or wrong, especially when certain things are being performed. So when it comes to creating code, it does have to meet certain requirements. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, in some cases, I will be looking in your code itself to see if you're, implementing whatever we're going over that week, so certain practices. But most of the time, it'll also be the output itself. So I do have to grade the behavior of your program. So please note, when it comes to assignments, there is a rubric that I'll provide for how it is graded. So I'll try to make it as clear as possible. You could send me a message if you have any questions on the specifications, but check over that rubric, make sure you have everything done for that assignment. Now, if you do notice you get a low score, and most of these are corrections you can make, you can go ahead, make those corrections, and resubmit for regrade for higher points. I do allow that. If you've done the work to go ahead, find whatever was wrong, whatever wasn't working correctly, and you fixed it, that is learning. You are learning. So therefore, I do believe you received those points. So do know, I do allow resubmissions. Yes, the grading is going to be a little more pickier than usual, but because we are talking about programming, we are talking about computers, so it does have to be done within a specific way. Assignments do have their specifications, but please do know you could look over it, resubmit, correct it, resubmit it for a new grade, or you could even come to me during the student hours or even a scheduled time so we could go over it and see what you have to fix. So with those announcements done, let's go ahead and get into this week's topic. So this week we are going to go over the very basics of programming, which is our building blocks. We'll be talking about variables, how to make them in Java, how to use them with operations, as well as how do we get user input. So we'll talk a little about why that is important. As for our demonstration, you'll notice I'm using the old Hello World file that we had for the last week's project. It's just easier for me. Again, when you're making your own assignment, either you could overwrite your current project or you could go ahead and create a new one. Make sure you're looking at the other video to know how to create new files when it comes to Eclipse IDE. Okay, so as for variables, I'm actually going to go ahead and demonstrate what they are over here. So we're going to use MS Paint. There we go. So variables is basically, you could think of it as containers that we're working with when programming. So you'll notice last week we just went over how to output something. So just how to output straight out text. But we're going to want, when it comes to programs, they're going to be doing some kind of calculations or even trying to figure something out. So solving some kind of problem or doing something cool, as some people would say. So in order to actually get that stuff done, you do need data. So you do need some kind of way to store data in order to start working with it. Just like how you have an office with a bunch of files, you don't want all those files just strewn about. Actually, you need those files to actually physically go somewhere. So that's why we have variables. You could think of it as putting files into different boxes or cabinets. So in our case, we have different variables, and typically when we have a variable, so maybe we have let's say you want to create a box over here for a variable, and maybe this one is called num. Excuse my writing, I'm using a mouse. But maybe it's just num, it's supposed to hold some kind of number, so you've gone ahead and created this box, you've named it num, and we're going to indicate maybe to someone, hey, this has to hold some kind of number. So maybe you'd write that somewhere like, oh, it holds a number. And this would be the spot that your variable holds. So now if someone wants to put a number, like maybe they want to put 17 into this box, they'd go ahead and say, hey, put 17 into this box called num. And they'd be like, okay, let's put 17. There we go. Oh, let me increase this. There we go. So now if someone wants to use whatever's in num, so if they want, let's say they have something going on here and they call num, so they're saying get whatever is in the box num and we're going to use it. Then right now it'll be 17. Now the thing with variables is, just think of these boxes, they could only hold maybe one number at a time. So in this case right now we have 17, but if someone else wants to put in another number, like let's say 201, then the box in this is going to change. So it's not going to be 17 anymore, it's going to be 201. There we go. And so now whenever someone wants to call num, so they want to say, hey, like at this point, I want whatever's in box num, then we'll tell them, oh, it's not 17 anymore. It is 201. So that's what variables are. So we have different boxes in which you've named, and they could only hold, in this case, this one only holds a number. You could have one that holds maybe like a word. So maybe this one you want to call color. So we're going to name it color. So this box is named color, but it doesn't hold numbers, it holds words. So if someone wants to hold blue, and remember when we are talking about text, you want them in quotations. So if we want blue to go in this box, then that text is also going to be blue in there. So anytime you call color, sorry for erasing, there we go. So anytime we want to call color, so let's say I want color dress. There we go. So this, we're calling the variable. We're calling this box color. So whatever this box is what we want here. I want this variable color dress. So all you do is substitute. So whatever's here, blue, it'll go here. So in this case it would be I want blue dress. If someone changes this variable to red, there we go. Then you substitute it again. Here, color, I want red dress. So you could see how we are using these to indicate different kinds of data we can hold. So like what color we want when referring to text. What number do we want to keep? So that's what we're talking about when it comes to variables. You're creating these boxes that you could hold data and it could be used later on. So if someone says, I want whatever's in this box, whatever value was put in that box last will be in there. Okay. So let's see how that looks in Java. So when it comes to Java, as I mentioned, there are boxes that we could hold, variables that we could hold for numbers and even text. Right now, let's just talk about numeric variables, so numeric data types, as we call it. So numeric data types holds anything that is numerical, any numbers. In our case, we're going to talk about the first one, which we formerly called integer. There we go. So integers are where you could hold whole numbers. So it has to be 1 to 101, even if it's 1015, it has to be whole. It could even be negative. So to do that, we're going to do something called a declaration. So you could think of it as us creating the box. So remember when we created the box, we gave it a name and we've indicated what can be held in there. So in this case, I said this box is named num and it could hold a number, in this case an integer. So you got to do the same for Java. You have to actually first indicate what kind of box are you creating. So what is it going to hold? In the case of an integer, you do that with Java by saying the data type first. So in this case, integer is just int. Now you give it the variable name. So we've given this box the name. So in this case, I could just call it num. There we go. And always make sure you're ending any of your statements with a semicolon. Perfect. So ending it with a semicolon tells Java, hey, you're done with whatever you're trying to do for this line. And it could move on to the next one if it needs to execute it. So this is just what we call a declaration. So we've created the box. We haven't put anything in the box, but we've said, hey, there's this box, this variable that can hold integers, so only integers, and its name is num. Now, if we want to give num something within its box, so we actually want to put a number in it, then you'll go ahead and you'll tell Java first what box you want to put it in. So what variable? In this case, we say num, because that's the name of this variable. Then you're going to use the assignment operator. So the assignment operator is just a single equal sign. So you're saying, hey, in this box, it's going to equal. So it's going to hold the value, in this case, a number. So as I mentioned, it has to be whole numbers. So we could say 55 and end it with a semicolon. There we go. Perfect. So this is called the declaration, so just creating the box. This over here is called the assignment. So now if we want to use this variable, so let's actually print it out down here. So you'll notice right now if I run my program, it still says hello world as we mentioned up here. Actually, let me call this is the start of the program. There we go. So now if we run it, this is the start of the program. Now if I want to print out what is in our variable num, I could go ahead. So let me get the system.out print line. So again, this is how we output to the console down here. And I could just call num. There we go. So you see, I just call the box, so whatever's within this box, and this box is going to be substituted with its value. So in this case, it's 55. So now if I run it, you'll see 55 appears down here. Now there is a way to combine the declaration and the assignment. So let's go ahead, let's create a new variable. So you can create multiple boxes as long as the names are, well, the data type, so what the box can hold, and the name have to be different. So if we do have a box int, it has to be different from num. We cannot declare a new num box. It would be confusing if you have two boxes labeled num. You wouldn't know which one someone is saying. If they say get the box num, you don't know which one it is. So we do have to name it something different. Maybe you want to call this num2. There we go. Now notice, again, this is just a declaration, so we've just declared the box, but there is something called initialization where you could combine the two. So you could declare the box into existence, so int num2, a box that can hold integers named num2, and we're going to give it a value. So maybe this one is actually 67. Perfect. So all together, it's gone ahead and it's created a box, and it instantly gave it an item. So you could think of it as just immediately making a box, labeling it, saying what it could hold, and then you gave it the actual data to hold all in one. So most people actually do this, and it is recommended to initialize at first, even if you're just, like, let's say you don't have the specific value in mind, even if it's just a 0, some people do -1, that's perfectly fine. But in our case, we do know, so this is 67. And if you get this underline, so this yellow underlining, it's just telling you, hey, this variable hasn't been created yet. So just make sure that so don't worry, it's just telling you, hey, it has not been created yet. If it stays that way throughout the rest of your program and you're done creating your program, you could go ahead and delete it since it didn't have any use. But we do want to use this. Let's say we want to, here, let's go ahead. So we're going to print out num, and we're going to print out num2. And the naming does count, even by the capitalization. Do note, this is what we call camel case. Since I've combined kind of two words, num, or even a shortened version, number, and in another word, I capitalize the next letter. So just know this is camel case. This is typically a good coding convention. Okay, so now we're going to print out num and num2. So if we run this, it should be 55 and 67. Perfect, 55 and 67. All right, so that is just for declaring, assigning, and initializing a variable for integers. And integers are something that you're going to be using quite often. Just please note, integers are whole numbers. Now another numeric type is called double. And doubles is basically anything that has a decimal. You can think of it as anything as a decimal. So doubles can hold anything with that, maybe 0.01, 12.01, 12.5. That can be held in here. So to create a box that can hold doubles, double, you call it a variable, a data type double. And then you still have to give it a name. So again, when it comes to creating variables, you give it the data type and then you give it the name. So in this, maybe we just want to call it, let's call this price. And let's go ahead and just initialize it right here. So double price, and we're going to say this is 3.50. There we go. So notice it will hold it, it can hold decimals as compared to if I try to do a 0.1 over here, it gives me an error because this variable can only hold integers, so whole numbers. Doubles, you could do something like this. So you could do all of your in-betweens. And again, it does hold negative. If I've put negative, it does that as well. Now you could also have the double hold whole numbers. So maybe here, let's get rid of that negative. Even if it's 3, it could still hold it. It's just if you do other stuff with it, let's say if you multiply it by half or you divide it by half, then it'll be able to do that calculation, which in this case would be 1.5. Well, I'll show that in a moment. Right now, let's do 3.50. There we go. So now if we print this out, so let's print out price. You'll notice something down here. So let's go ahead, run this. There we go. So notice it does 3.5 without the 0. We'll talk about how you could start adding in those zeros in the next couple of weeks. But if you get something like this, it's fine. Just know that Java's going to basically cut off stuff that it sees not needed. In this case, it sees that the 0 is not really needed to hold it. Even if you put a whole bunch of zeros. There we go. You notice that it chops it all off. So just note that. Okay. So those are your numeric data types. Another data type you can get, and I'll go over briefly right now, is string. So you could think of this as text. Now strings hold text for you. Remember this up here are quotations. This is what these boxes will be able to hold. So you just create this variable, this box, with the data type string. So make sure you have it uppercase string. And again, just give it a name. So maybe this one's actually, let's do color. So let's just call it color. And let's go ahead and initialize it. So equals, let's call this blue. There we go. So now, just like with the other stuff, we could go ahead and either, use this box. And to do that, let's go ahead down here. So I'm going to use the system.out line, and we're just going to print out the color. So again, remember whatever is within this box, it's going to replace. So let's go ahead and run this, and it prints out as blue. Now if you do want to do something like over here, we had a sentence, I want, well in this case it would be a colored dress. If we want something like that, you can combine text. So when it comes to variables, you can combine it with any of your, we call this string literals, so whatever we explicitly put into the print line. So we could do that. So what you're going to do is here. So we're going to start out with I want, and remember formatting does matter, so you're going to do I want space, space, keep that in quotation, so that's your string literal, and then to combine it with whatever is in your string or within your variable, do an add. There we go. So I want, and you can think of it as an ad lib, so it's going to say I want, add in whatever's in the variable color, then you're going to do another plus, so you're kind of like sticking it together like Legos, space, dress. There we go. So now if we run this, I want a blue dress. If I change this to red, I want a red dress. There we go. So that's how you'll put strings together with the output. You could even put other variables, like remember in our previous video I did mention in the extra stuff you could add stuff with numbers. You could do the same. So maybe it's not a dress, maybe they want a certain number of dresses, like in this case here. So I want remember use the plus num, and we do want a space between the number and the color, so we're going to go ahead and put in that space directly. So I want ad lib whatever's a number, color, and then dress. Let's put dress is just in case. So now if I run this, it should do like an ad lib where they use this text, so remember this is in quotations, then you plug in whatever that variable is with the plus signs. We added a space here, so if you do want that formatting, you do have to explicitly add in that space. Plug in the variable, then put in the rest of your string literal. So if I run this, there we go. I want 55 red dresses. And if we want to change that number, maybe just to 2, you go ahead, we could change that there and run I want 2 red dresses. All right. So those are the main variable types we'll be using as of now. So you have your int, your double, and your string. So remember this is whole numbers, numbers with decimals, and this is your text. There's some other data types that were mentioned in the readings that you can go ahead and use, but these are the main ones you will be using. Okay, so down here, let's actually do something. So remember, I changed the number up here, but what if it was still 55? And I want to change it over here. Maybe I'm using num at some point up here. Maybe I wanted it to still pronounce 55 here, but change down here. You could still do that, remember, with the assignment. So you could assign variables at any point in the program. Let's go ahead, do it down here. So you're going to call num equals 2. So now at this point of the change, remember we've changed whatever's in the box. So now if we call the box, say give me whatever's in the box, now it's going to be 2. So you'll notice this will still say 55 as the num says up here. But this will say I want 2 red dresses. Let's go ahead and change that. There we go. And do note that's because we got num, we called that box, we put in a new value. So that's the beauty of variables. You could go ahead and change what's within them. All right, before we move into operations, I do want to note, especially when it comes to changing variables, do note that when it comes to Like notice I've written all of the code within our main function. Again, that's where most of the execution is going to happen. So make sure you're writing everything within main. And when we get into the more of the control of flow next week, so we're going to talk about different controls within the program. Program execution goes sequentially. So once it goes up in main, it goes down in order. And in this case, we've created the box here. So we've created the variable here, num. If you try to call num beforehand, so you want to say, hey, I want to print out whatever's in num. So let's repeat this line, put it up here. It doesn't exist yet. Remember, it's going down in order. Num does not exist yet beforehand. So do make sure that you declare your variables beforehand or when appropriate. So now that we know how to create variables, let's go ahead and learn about some of the operations. So let's go down here and let's do operations. When it comes to operations, you could utilize different numbers, variables with this. In this case, we're just going to focus on mathematical operations. So that would be your plus, minus, divide, and multiply, which is your asterisk. Now again, since it's computers, you will be doing some math when it comes to calculating. So you will get quite a bit of an assignment where you're actually performing some kind of math. So just make sure if you need to brush up on those skills, there's a lot of online resources, or you could come during student hours to ask, in some cases, what an average is, in other cases, how to perform certain calculations. I can help with that. So with operations, let's go ahead, let's create a new variable. So let's go ahead, let's do int, we're going to call this a. And let's declare this with 2. 2. There we go. Then we're going to have another one, int b. And let's have this one hold 5. So we have 2 variables, 2 boxes holding whole numbers 2 and 5. Now let me go ahead, let me create a third one, int c. But we're not going to declare it with anything. Actually, we're going to go ahead and see what the sum of a and b would be. So we could go ahead and we could directly say, hey, 2 plus 5. There we go. And we could print that out. So let me get the system.print line, print out C. There we go. So now if I run it, there we go. You could see that 2 plus 5 is 7. And actually, let's customize this a little bit. We're going to say, hey, the sum is, connect that. There we go. Remember, anytime you have string literals, do the plus sign. I didn't have to do it afterwards because there's no string literal after it. There's no text after it. There we go. So right now it says 7. So that would be the sum of A and B. But if A changes, maybe to 10, I'd have to change the 2 down here, which would be, you'd have to change it to 10, run it, there we go, that's 15. If B changes to 7, and maybe A also changes to 12, you notice I have to keep on updating what's up here, and down here, run it, there we go. And that could be tedious, especially if you have bigger programs, so why not just use the variables here? There we go. So with expressions, so notice if we just do the plus sign, this expression will calculate, be stored within C. So that's how we're getting our, in this case right now it's 19. It'll do 12 plus 7 first, get 19, store it in C. So that same concept can still work even if we're using the variable. So let's go ahead and instead of 12, we're just going to do A and 7 is going to be B. So whatever is in variable A and B, that will be substituted in here. So that's what's happening in this expression. So 12 will substitute A, 7 will substitute B. And then the Java will go ahead and look at, okay, so 12 plus 7, that's 19, put it into C. And so now when we use C, it'll come out as 19. So if I Let me go ahead and save. I do Control S by saving. There we go. And run. There we go. It's 19. And if one of these changes, so maybe I want B to be 234, I just have to change B. That variable being called here is substitute. So now I'll do here A is now 12 plus 234. Whatever that sum is going to be stored in C. And then when we call C, we'll go ahead and print here. So let's go ahead and run. There we go. So A, which is 12, plus B, which is 234, equals 246. So that's how we can use different operations, even here. So if we want to do one called, so I'm going to create a variable called minus, which indicates that we're going to do A minus B. There we go. All you do is you use the minus between those numbers and you'll perform that calculation. So you'll perform it first and then store it in minus. And same thing over here. If we do, in this case I'm actually going to do multiply. You'll notice that there'll be something weird if I do, let's call this multiply. There we go. And let me print this out. I'll show you the weird thing in a bit. So this one will be minus, and make sure again we're using the correct variable name over here. So it's not C, you want the minus. Actually no, sum, and then this is the difference. There we go. And then the product for multiply. And make sure you put in the correct variable, multiply. So now if we run these, we could see each of those calculations. So the current values of A and B, the sum of them is 246, the difference is negative 222, the product is 2,808. Let's actually minimize this. Let's do this as 4, and let's put this at 5. So now we actually have numbers we could comprehend. So 4 plus 5, 9. 4 minus 5, negative 1. 4 times 5, 20. There we go. So those are different operations. Even if we want to do something that's here, let's go ahead. So remember operations, this will calculate first and then be put into variables. Well, we could also just straight out perform the calculation over here, and whatever the value is can be printed. So if we want to do something like A plus B, there we go. This will actually perform mathematical calculations. So you'll see a 9 appear down there. There we go, 9. Okay. And same thing if you want to multiply, that will be a 20. Perfect. So you can do it straight down here. Just be forewarned, if you want to add string literal, so let's say let's just call this math. It is recommended to put these within parentheses, just so you could, for you and Java to know that this is a math calculation. So now if you do something like plus, Java will know, okay, I do the values A plus B, which will be 9 down here. Perfect. Now you can combine operations. So I'm just going to call this combo. So let's do A plus B, and maybe you could do plus B minus, maybe this one's just 10. So you notice we could combine operations and it just performs it like a normal math calculation. Goes straight across A plus B minus 10. Oh, I still need to print that out. So let's go ahead, let's print out that combo down here. So this is combo. And we still have to call the variable combo. Run this. There we go. And that entire calculation comes out with 4. So you can combine different operations. Let me go ahead. If you're doing something with multiplying, so let's go ahead and do, so this a plus b times 2. You do have to use the order of operations, so when you're looking at this, it isn't going to do a... Here, let's actually run this. Let's see what happens. There we go. So you'll notice it doesn't do, in this case, like a plus b is 9, and times 2 that would be 18, but it's telling us 14. That's because Java does abide to order of operations. It's going to be times 2 first. So that would be 10, and then it will go ahead and add it with whatever is in A, which is 4. So do keep that in mind. If you want a specific, like in this case, we wanted A plus B, then times 2. You have to use your parentheses. So in order of operations, parentheses are performed first. So A plus B, that will be 9, then times 2, that will be 18. So this will change from 14 to 18. Okay. So that's basic operations with integers. You'll notice I avoided the division because it's weird when it comes to in. So let's say here, I'm going to go ahead, we're going to replace A up here with, let's say A is going to be 1 divided by 2. So we want it to be half. And let's actually print out A. So let me go ahead and here, divided by 2, let's just print out A. So this is just me formatting, saying that's what we're trying to calculate. But you'll notice if we run this, so there we go, we have what we have printed out here, and it does the math 1 divided by 2, but it gives us 0. Let me show you over here what's happening. So let's erase this. So remember I told you, if you have a box, in our case we created a box A, and it could only hold integers. So previously it was holding, let's see, previously it was holding 4, so like a whole number. But then now we wanted to add in 1 divided by 2. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. So that's actually a decimal. And remember, integers only hold whole numbers. There are no decimals. So what the integer will do, if you do something like that, in this case we tried directly giving it 1 divided by 2, Java will perform the calculation, so that comes out as 0.5, but since it sees it's an integer, it will go ahead and just chop off the decimal part. So in our case, it chopped out the 0.5 and it gave it 0. So now 0 is in here. So you do have to be careful if you're trying to do division with integers, because it will chop it off, and that can actually change the outcome of your program. Now if you want to avoid that, you could go ahead, we could create another box. Let's call this, well, in our case we used price as a double, which does hold decimal values. So if you wanted to do 1 divided by 2, that goes in as 0.5, since doubles do allow that decimal. While when it comes to integers, it is going to chop it off. So keep that in mind when you're doing calculations with ints. You are going to have to work your way around it. Maybe you're just going to have to work with doubles. However that is, just keep that in mind, that if you put a double into an int, it will chop it off. But a double into a double, it'll keep it. So like down here, I know we had there we go, we had a double called price. So let's go ahead and use that. So if I do price equals 1 divided by 2, and let's go ahead down here, this one will print out price. So this is we're gonna call this int 1/2, and this is double 1/2. So now you'll notice this will be a 0, the other one will be 0.5. So let's go ahead, run this. Oh, and you'll notice it still does 0. So what happened here? Well, the other weird thing is, note, you're using integers here. Java has a weird thing where even if you're using integers, it's still going to put it as 0, and so now when it goes into double, it's going to be 0.0. So there's some ways around this. One is put the decimals here. So even if it's just 0.0, so 1.0 divided by 2.0, you run that. Now that Java has detected, oh, these are decimals, just by putting the 0.0, it'll go ahead and do 0.5. Okay, another way to go about this is, so this, you can convert the data type of, let's say, certain numbers. In this case, we want to say, hey, whatever this is, turn it into a double. So you do have to do it, like in this case, this is turning 1 into a double, and just by doing that, Java knows, oh, we're working with doubles, you want to divide it by 2, so that has to be a 0.5. So I run this, there we go, it does the same thing. So again, when it comes to doubles, it is a little weirder, especially if you're working with, like in this case, trying to do math with integers. So just keep that in mind. There's this version. I always say, at least try to do, you could do this version, so at least the 0.0. There we go. We run it, 0.5. And of course with division, same thing, order of operations here, so make sure you're checking out the order operations. PEMDAS, here let me do PEMDAS, you could look into that, which is what is used by Java. Alright, so those are different operations, and again, this is for mathematical. You don't have to worry about it for strings just yet. Where's our string? There's our string. So you don't have to worry about using strings with math. Pretty much the only thing you do want to do with strings is this plus, concatenation. You just add those two strings together to form a bigger one, as we do kind of here. But with math, it is performing math. Okay, so all of this, let's go ahead and delete all of this. Or actually, let me comment all of this out. So let me go ahead. Remember, with my commenting out, I do single line, so you do the dash dash. You notice it doesn't appear in the program because I've commented it out. So the program, Java won't execute whatever is commented out. If I want to do multi-line comment, I'll do my dash asterisk and close this off with the asterisk dash. There we go. So now if I run this, we have a clean slate. Okay. So now let me go ahead and let's work with input. So notice what we were working with, we had to directly tell the program, like in this case, hey, A is 4, B is 5. But what if we want the user to put something in? So notice a lot of this was just me running it, and it just gave me an output. That's it. There wasn't anything you could do down here. You could try typing and you notice it doesn't do anything. Actually, the program is done. So the user isn't actually interacting with it, which can be pretty dull for a program. Imagine a calculator that will just always tell you 1 plus 2. And then if you needed to figure out 1 plus 5, you'd need someone to go and program that and then give you the output. That seems kind of tedious, so we do want the user to be able to provide an input. Now for inputs, we do have to use something called a scanner. So Java has different tools that you could use. We'll talk about what classes are later on in this course, but for now, again, you could think of it as a tool we could use to perform different things within our program. So in this case, if we want to use a scanner, we actually have to pull in that tool. So at the very top of your program, outside of this class, outside of your function, we're going to do an import. So you have to do import Java space java.util.scanner with a capital S. So we're telling Java, hey, we want to use the scanner. We want to use the scanner class. So now we're going to go down here, and you're basically going to think of it as creating a variable for a tool. So remember we talked about variables here, where this one holds a number, this one also holds a number. If it's a string, it can hold a text. We're going to create a box called stdin. So that's just a standard name we give scanners. And this will hold the tool scanner. And this tool is actually something we can use throughout the program. So we do have to create a box for it. You could think of it as having a special case for maybe like a hammer or a pencil, and you could take it out of that case and use it every time you call its name. So we do have to do the same here. So it works similarly to instantiating variables, but a little differently. So in this case, we do have to say it's a type scanner. So we're saying, hey, this variable with two n's. This variable is going to hold a scanner, so the actual tool. And then we're going to name it stdin. You could name it whatever you want, even if it's just a scan. Some people do scan, some others do s, or they just call it input. I like using stdin. And now we're going to instantiate it, so equals, and again it's a little different from variables. This is called instantiating a class. You're going to say new scanner system.in. There we go. So now what we're saying is, hey, create a new scanner tool, so a new class, or in this case an object. Again, we'll go over that later in this course, but just think of it as, hey, we're creating this tool. System.in means we're going to use the console, so we're going to use the console to get an input. And now this tool will be stored within a variable stdin. There we go. So now let's go ahead, and in this case, as our scanners have functions in which we could allow for user input. So in this case, let's go ahead and prompt the user to put in something. So in this case, let's go back to our color example. So we're going to say type in your favorite color. Okay. So if we run this right now, it says type in your favorite color, but I still can't type anything yet. That's because we have to use the scanner. So we do have to go ahead. Let's create a new variable for color. So remember, since I have everything commented out, we don't have that variable anymore. So I do have to go ahead and say string. So type string, its name is color, and we're going to go ahead and instantiate it with our scanner class. So to use the scanner, you have to call its name. So you do have to say what name this tool is. In this case, we called it stdin with a capital I. Then you're going to use a dot. This means we're going to use some kind of function with this tool. So this is our way of being able to start using it. And now we're going to call function name, and you'll notice if you're using Eclipse IDE, it's going to give you recommended functions you can use. The one I'm going to focus on right now is next, or in our case, next line. So I'm going to say next line, do your parentheses, and that's it. So now if I run this, you notice this is the start of the program. Type in your color. I could start typing. So I'll type blue, press enter. Nothing happens because we didn't provide an output, but I can show you it's working by doing that output. So if the user says blue, and notice user input is in the light blue, let's go ahead and repeat that back to the user. So we're going to say your favorite color is, and remember, outside of these quotations, we're going to add in that variable. So whatever the user put in. So now if I run this, and there we go, you'll notice, so it does, so it prints out this is the start of the program. It prints out, type in your favorite color with the misspelling, but it doesn't output this yet. That's because it's waiting for our input. It's waiting for us to type in. So if I type in blue and I press enter, next line means that it's going to get whatever's within this entire line that I've written. So in my case, I just wrote blue. I press enter. Now whatever I typed in is going to go into color. So the scanner is going to get whatever's within here and then put it within our variable. So in this case, I was looking for a string. Next line looks for a string, so text. It puts it in here, which is blue, and then now if we use color, it'll go ahead and use it. If I run this again, remember, next line, it'll go ahead and if I even type blue, red, green, with all of those comma spaces, I press enter, and it prints out that entire thing, blue, red, green. So next line, you notice it gets everything from there. When I press enter, it'll get the entire line, put that text into my string. Now let me comment this out. And if I do, let's do the same thing. So we have a variable of string color. Actually here, let's do this. We're going to use this quite a bit. So let's have that as a declaration up here. There we go. And then now we could just say color. std next. So the difference between next line and next is that it will only take whatever it sees up to the space and then stop. So in this case, here, let me show you. Let me run. And if I type blue, and let me just do this with spaces, green, red, or even if I type, here, let's just do light blue. So maybe I want to say, oh, it's light blue. Oh, let's correct that misspelling. And I run it, you notice it just takes light because next will only go up to the white space. So in this case, it's our space over here, and then put it into the variable. So the scanner is going to go up to just that point and put it into the variable. And that's why it only does light, because there was a space in between here, it didn't catch blue. To catch that, you'd have to use next line. So if I replace that, so I commented this out, now we're using next line. Let me run, and I want to put light blue, enter. Now it gets the whole line, so it doesn't stop until the space. Next line we'll get the whole line, and then store it in here. All right. So that's neat. Let's do, so up here I'm going to declare int. Let's do this as num stuffies. So we're going to do different plushies or stuffies. Actually, yeah, let's call that stuffy. So num plushies. So this program is going to ask, what is your favorite color? And let's have it here. We're not going to use, well, let's just leave that. So type in your favorite color. Let's correct that. There we go. And then it'll ask how many plushies do you want? So now if we want to get in a number from the user, you'll go ahead, so let's get that variable num plushies. Remember, you have the spelling correct, and it equal to std in, so you do need the scanner. And next is typically how we start out the, getting the input. But you'll notice there's different kinds you could use. So we just went over next line and next, but there's also, you notice, next int, next byte, next short. This is specific for returning other data values. So next and next line only returns string. Next int, so if you do next int, parentheses, semicolon, this will turn in integers. So now that will properly be stored in here, and we could go ahead and do, there we go. So let's do here is, let's put in the num plushies. There we go. So here is the total of how many plushies the person wanted. We're going to put the color, so the person's favorite color. And we're going to call this, maybe it's wolf plushies. There we go. So now if I run this, type in your favorite color. Mine's, I put light blue. How many plushies do you want? I want 2. Here is 2 light blue wolf plushies, although that should be here are. But there we go. You notice that it combines our input, and even if I put something different, so let's say type in your favorite color, red, and I want 10 plushies. Here is 10 red wolf plushies. So that's how you use different input. You have to use your scanner, so whatever that name you gave it, dot, and then use the function, so the operation, to get that specific value based on the data type. So next int does for number. There's also next double, so let me just put it down here. So if you do stdin.next double, that'll take it in as a double type. Now the thing about differentiating between numbers and int is, for this instance, maybe we have a price. So let's have a price up here, double price for each plushie, and maybe each plushie is $15.50. So we're going to give this user a total. So here is, so you get the plushies, but now your total is, and I'm going to directly do the calculation over here. So remember, I could do operations over here directly, or I could create a variable double total and do the num plushies, so whatever the user gave us. There we go. So again, make sure you're typing in the variable name correctly, times the price. So I could do that, type out total. There we go. So we got that total. So now if I run this, what is your favorite color? Let's do green. And I want 12 plushies. So here's 12 green wolf plushies, but now your total is 186. Again, it truncates the zeros, but you get the idea, $186. If you want to do the dollars, just add the $sign. There we go, run. Let's do this one, I just want to do blue. Blue, let's do 7 plushies. There we go, $8.50. So again, there's that way you could do it, or as I mentioned, you could get this. So let's comment this out, put this in parentheses, and just directly do the calculation there. So now if I run this, again, let's do purple. And I want just 2 plushies. There you go, here's your 2 purple wolf plushies, your total is $31. So that's why having these variable types matters. If it was if we got the number of plushies as a string, that wouldn't work. Let's go ahead here. So let's change that to string, and let's do this just as next. And you notice it's already giving me an error down here because you can't do a text times a number. That will not work. It won't even run. Let's run. There we go. You see, it won't run. So you do have to make sure you're using the correct variable types. Numbers can have operations performed on them. but text, you can't do math with it. So this would give you the more correct calculation of what we're trying to do here. Okay. So I'll leave it at this for now. This should be enough to help you with performing your project. And as you notice, like with me doing this, it doesn't give me the whole 2 decimals. So in this case, it just gave me the 1 0. That's it. That's okay for your project. Again, we haven't gone over that formatting just yet, so I will allow it if it's just showing this weird single 0. But that is how you're going to utilize variables, operations, and the scanner class. I did provide links for different methods on how to use the scanner class. By methods, I mean this function. So you could take a look at that. It does have a fun little tutorial that you can run through and see what kind of types it's turning in, how it's taking in different inputs. But after this, you'll see that you'll create a nice little application that allows you to ask the user for some kind of order, and you give them the total based on that order, which does seem very reminiscent of maybe if you've done, let's say, one of those digital, if you've gone onto a mobile device and you've ordered food from there, so a certain amount of food and such, you could think of yourself as doing something like that. Okay, so I'll leave it there. Again, if you need assistance, please make sure that you're reaching out to me or attending the student hours. Again, I do allow for scheduling outside of the student hours if you need additional assistance. I do say please make sure you're getting these assignments done, or at least started early, so if you do run into issues, you'll be able to reach me earlier. Alright, thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.